The Angolan War of Independence, the struggle for freedom and self-determination. The Angolan War of Independence marked a significant chapter in the fight against colonialism in Africa. This struggle was more than just military action, it was a quest for freedom and self-determination that shaped the nation's future. The colonial context, Portuguese rule and its impact on Angola. Portuguese rule, Portuguese colonization of Angola began in the 16th century. Over the years, this rule imposed harsh economic policies and a slave trade that devastated local communities. The colonial administration prioritized resource extraction over the welfare of Angolans, leading to widespread suffering. Early resistance movements. By the early 20th century, nationalist sentiments began to emerge. Organizations like the Angolan Liberal Party started voicing opposition against colonial rule. Activists sought equality, rights, and independence from Portuguese control, setting the stage for future conflicts. The catalyst for war. The global political climate shifted after World War II. The rise of decolonization movements across Africa inspired Angolans. By the 1960s, discontent grew among the population, leading to calls for armed resistance against colonial powers. The rise of nationalist movements. A multifaceted struggle. MPLA, the Popular Movement for the Liberation of Angola. MPLA ideology and initial strategies. The MPLA emerged as a dominant political force advocating for Marxist ideologies. Their aim was to mobilize the population through guerrilla warfare and political education. Key figures and their roles. Notable leaders like Agostinho Neto galvanized support. Their charisma and vision helped unify various groups against colonial authorities. FNLA, the National Front for the Liberation of Angola. FNLA's contrasting approach to the conflict. The FNLA took a different route, initially seeking support from the US and neighboring countries. They focused on conventional military tactics instead of guerrilla resistance, FNLA's alliances, and support networks. With backing from countries like Zaire, the FNLA carved out a significant role in the independence movement. Their alliances shifted as the need for resources increased. UNITA, the National Union for Total Independence of Angola. UNITA's guerrilla warfare tactics. UNITA employed guerrilla warfare to challenge both Portuguese and rival factions. They often targeted infrastructure to weaken the colonial grip. UNITA's regional and international alliances. UNITA's relationships with South Africa and the US provided much-needed support. This helped them gain ground in some regions despite facing significant challenges. The armed conflict, a decade of brutality and shifting alliances. The early years of warfare, guerrilla tactics and colonial responses. Statistics on casualties and displacement. The early years saw significant casualties and displacement, with tens of thousands affected. Key battles like the Battle of Kifangondo highlighted the violent clashes between colonial forces and nationalists. Examples of key battles and their strategic significance. Each battle represented not just military resistance but also the growing resolve of Angolans to claim their rights. Successes gave hope, while losses sparked more resistance. The escalation of violence, the Cold War's influence on the conflict, involvement of Cuba and the Soviet Union in support of the MPLA. As the Cold War intensified, the external powers intervened. Cuba and the Soviet Union provided military support to the MPLA, transforming the conflict into a proxy war. Support for UNITA from South Africa and the United States. Conversely, the US and South Africa backed UNITA, seeing them as a bulwark against communism in Southern Africa. This led to increased violence and further complicating the situation on the ground. International involvement and its consequences. A proxy war in Africa. The Angolan conflict caught the attention of global powers. This intervention exacerbated the violence and made it harder for local factions to find common ground for peace. The role of the Cold War in shaping the conflict. Ideological battleground. Angola as a pawn in superpower rivalry. Expert analysis on the Cold War's impact. The fight for Angola became a reflection of the global ideological struggle. The Cold War fueled local factions, leading to deeper divisions. The influence of Marxist-Leninist and anti-communist ideologies. Both sides operated under contrasting ideologies. The MPLA pushed for Marxist principles, while opponents promoted capitalism and anti-communism, global power dynamics, shifting alliances, and military intervention. Examples of foreign military aid. Foreign military aid drastically changed the dynamics of the conflict. For instance, Soviet arms shipments bolstered MPLA forces, while UNITA received advanced weaponry from the U.S. Analysis of the impact of the Cuban military intervention. Cuban troops played a vital role in supporting the MPLA. Their presence shifted the balance, allowing the MPLA to maintain its position against rival factions. The road to independence, negotiations, ceasefires, and the Alva Agreement. The Alva Agreement, a path towards negotiated independence. Key terms and conditions of the Alva Agreement. In 1975, the Alva Agreement established a framework for peace. It laid down guidelines for mutual recognition and power sharing between factions. Challenges in implementing the agreement. Despite initial hope, implementation faced numerous obstacles. Clashes continued as factions struggled over territorial control and influence. The aftermath of independence. Challenges of nation building. Statistics on the initial years of Angolan independence. The immediate years following independence were fraught with challenges. Economic instability and political unrest hindered progress. The examples of immediate challenges facing the new nation. The country struggled with infrastructure damage, a fractured political landscape, and ongoing violence. These issues shaped the early governance of Angola. Legacy of the Angolan War of Independence. In a nation forged in conflict, the human cost of the war, lasting impact on the population, statistics on long-term effects of the conflict. The war left deep scars. Millions were displaced, and countless families were affected by trauma and loss. Examples of ongoing challenges facing Angolan society. Issues like poverty, health crisis, and social division continue to plague the nation. These challenges are reminders of the complex legacy of the struggle for independence. The political landscape reshaping the future of Angola. Analysis of the lasting political implications of the war. The conflict set the stage for Angola's political climate. Power struggles and tensions persisted long after the war ended. Actionable tips for further research. To understand the Angolan War better, consider exploring resources like documentaries, books, and academic articles that dive deeper into its history and effects. Conclusion: understanding the Angolan War's enduring relevance. The Angolan War of Independence is a story of resilience and hope amidst suffering. Its legacy continues to shape today's Angola. Recognizing this struggle is crucial for understanding the nation's ongoing challenges and aspirations for a brighter future.